Doug Luzader reporting live from Washington. Thank you. And we have a split panel today. We're going to start with David Mercer, who is a Democratic strategist, joining us live from D.C. And in about 10 minutes, we're going to get the Republican response from Karen Hedready. So we're going to start right now with some of our topics. Hi, David. Good morning to you on this Monday.
Good morning to you as well, Patty Ann.
In the opinion pieces today, one in the Wall Street Journal says that presidential candidate Herm Cain's tax proposal is really got a lot of interest lately. Obviously, we're seeing a lot more interest in Cain in general. And let's talk about that first. He was on Fox News Sunday yesterday discussing his rising popularity.
It shows that the voice of the people is much more powerful than the voice of the media. As you know, some of the media outlets have been trying to make the Republican contest a contest between two people, two governors. The people said something differently. The second main thing that came out of that, message is more powerful than money. They spent a lot of money trying to influence that straw poll vote. We rented a bus.
All right, and that's Herman Cain. What about that point? You know, he's trying to, he says the media is trying to make this between Perry and Romney, but his message is resonating, and he did win that straw poll.
He absolutely did, and hats off to Herman Cain in doing so. I would have to challenge him, though, with regard to message over money, because without money, and we all know the mother's milk of politics, that without the money you can't get your message out over a long and sustained period. We see him doing that now, and a lot of that coming off the heels of his debate performance as well as his showing in the straw poll. But nonetheless, the question will be two questions. Can he continue to get his message out? And as we may see Governor Christie getting in the race, will we forget about Herman Cain? And secondly, if we do forget about Herman Cain, are they going to forget about him in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, because he has no ground troops and a staff to see that his campaign through and his message to resonate further?
Yeah, we're going to talk about Chris Christie in a moment, but more on Cain, and
Sure.
We're talking about his message. Well, what is his message? It's this 999 plan, scrapping the current income tax system and going with a 9% personal flat tax, 9% corporate flat tax, and a 9% national sales tax. It would eliminate the estate tax, eliminate some taxes on investment income, eliminate the payroll tax, and curb some of the special income tax deductions. That's where it would make back some of the money that it loses on these lower overall rates. The Tea Party loves this proposal. A lot of people say it's much more fair than the current system, and it would go with this sales tax. And we have Kevin Hassett, an economist with a conservative think tank, saying it's the best plan in the Republican field right now. We can easily expect an extra % or so in economic growth from a plan like this. What say you?
Well, what I say is I do believe that a large part of Herman Cain's success in Florida was that, unlike his competitors, he does have a plan. And I think that's what people are hungering for, and that's why we would like to see here in Washington President Obama's plan for creating jobs to be approved by Congress so that he can sign that, so that we can, with reduced taxes and extended tax cuts for the middle class, see that plan executed and to put more money in the pockets of consumers to create demand and start the growth back up again. But going back to his plan, I'm not so sure about fairness, and with regard to the sales tax, which may fall disproportionately on consumers, again taxing that very demand and strangling that demand that we're looking to in fact increase and expand so that companies see their products and services being more purchased and therefore allowing for more growth in GDP.
All right, so let's move on now to Chris Christie. Of course, there is now talk again of him entering the race, the current New Jersey governor. And, there are some articles today saying, it's much easier to be a potential candidate than it is to be an actual candidate. And
No
once
doubt.
the spotlight is on him, can we see a flame out, sort of like we've seen with some other candidates?
Look, I think the odds are in favor of just a scenario for several reasons. One, as we know, the Florida Republican Party moved up its primary, condensing very early the number of states that could lead to a knockout punch by a leading contender such as Romney. It gives Christie very, very little time to get his footing in entering the race and also steadying his candidacy from all the media glare, as you mentioned, and media attention that he will garner immediately. And that becomes a distraction, as we have seen it happen to Rick Perry. As McCain has said, you know, the water looks a lot warmer from outside the water. Once you jump in, it can get a little cold. And I don't think that Christie does, in fact, run. The other problem is fundraising. You know, it's very difficult raising millions of dollars in 2,000 plus increments. It's not like corporate money or PACs can contribute to the extent in the presidential campaign or federal funds. And I think it's very, very difficult to amass that kind of money and also get it out to a campaign staff in 4 or 5 states within 4 months.
Yeah. You mentioned Rick Perry. A big controversy with him this week. A report came out that he used to hunt and, in fact, take guests to this camp in West Texas. And it had a name. I'm just hesitant to even say it, but it was called Niggerhead. And his campaign has released a statement that said that although that's what it was called in the 80s and 90s, once Rick Perry's father, Ray, joined a lease giving them hunting rights almost 30 years ago to this, the name was changed. Some people are disputing that, saying that they have seen that name on a rock someplace more recently, and that it was just recently painted over. How damaging is this?
I think it hurts a lot. As we see, we're not talking about Rick Perry and the positives of his campaign. We're talking about something in the past that is very troubling. You know, we also have to ask, you know, both of Texas media and media at large, how this is only coming out now. Or, you know, where is the Tea Party on this issue? As Herman Cain, garnering a lot of support from the Tea Party going into the Florida poll, what do they have to say about this? I think there's a lot unsaid that remains to be said in the coming days, which is going to take Rick Perry off of his game and focusing on a positive platform of his candidacy. Very troubling.
So that leaves Romney, and some political analysts saying that Romney, at least his aides, are looking forward to the possibility of Chris Christie entering the race, because it does take that glare off of Romney. He feels like he's gotten his message out there and hasn't had any major controversies beyond people's varying opinions on his health care plan, etc. And that he just wants to stay out of the spotlight, let Christie take all the targeted criticism, and then he can just kind of surge right before the primary and sprint across the finish line, as one analyst put it. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's been very interesting in watching. We've seen Michelle Bachmann, we've seen Rick Perry, we've seen Newt Gingrich. All of them tried to get to to Romney, and they've all either tripped on their own words or somehow fell short of trying to be the main competitor to Romney. Now we have the prospect of possibly Christie. I would just say, batter up, as the Romney campaign is likely to say, and we'll pitch to you and see how you can handle it.
Yeah. New York Times today talking about President Obama's campaign on the other side there, and saying that with the economy in such turmoil, that he is actually taking some plays from the Bush '04 playbook, which is trying to divert attention away from the economy by exploiting social and national security issues. The article quoting Mr. Obama's strategists intend to use abortion, gay rights, the environment, and successes in the fight against al-Qaeda to counter economic attacks. Do you believe this will work?
I'm not sure whether it works, but let me characterize it in a different way. What we see President Obama doing is talking about jobs and the economy and staying laser focused on just that. Now, one of the reasons that national security might be raised is because the president is delivering on that, as we saw last week with the elimination of another leading al-Qaeda figure. And I think that speaks in stark contrast to what what we saw during the Bush administration, including Osama bin Laden. And so national security is going to be part of the campaign. Very little experience you will find among the Republican candidates, and they can't use that as a platform. It's just right down our alley for us to talk about, because it's part of the overall record owing to what Obama's focus has been.
Okay. Lastly, Ron Paul, an article in the Associated Press today calling him the spoiler, saying he has virtually no chance of actually getting the nomination. However, Republican operatives are convinced that he will play spoiler in important states, siphoning votes and attention from his rivals for months to come and helping to determine the nominee. How important is the Ron Paul factor?
I think it is a factor, but again, we haven't seen it affecting for instance, when you do for a couple of weeks get Romney and Perry going head to head, and then there are the shifts, you're not seeing a lot of pull from the Paul votes, but still enough for one of the two to pull ahead in a commanding way. I think, for instance, if you look at New Hampshire, it will be almost, as it stands now, pretty much a blowout when it comes to that primary for Romney. And Paul may be showing up, but at the same time, I'm not sure how much impact he really will have in the lineup of the first 2 or 3 candidates going into the other states, including Iowa, South Carolina, and now Florida.
Back to Herman Cain, who we mentioned, has surged recently and gotten a lot of the spotlight. He made this comment recently in terms of why the black population tends to vote so overwhelmingly Democrat, and his reaction was well, they've been brainwashed, which some black voters found insulting. Others saying, no, it's just kind of the way we're, brought up into that Democratic tradition. What do you make of all that?
I think I see less offense as and more of an embarrassment for him even to raise that issue. If I was advising Herman Cain and I was just coming out of a straw poll victory, I would stick to the issues on the economy and otherwise, as opposed to taking a insignificant shot at others in the community who support Democrats. And it's almost not worth addressing. There's a diversity in the African American community, and to say that they're brainwashed, I think, is painting too broad a brush, and also takes away from what I would think was a more solid messaging, and that is on the economy. And from what I gather in observation of the conservative wing of the party and Tea Party, they don't like talking about race, and to bring it up even to the extent of now injuring one of their other candidates gets a little murky.
All right. David Mercer, Democratic strategist, thank you so much for joining us live from the D.C. Bureau. And
pleasure being with you, Patty Ann.
And you too. And you can find him on Twitter at Beltway. That's at Beltway. Thank you, David. And we're going to get a Republican response in a bit from Karen Hanreddy. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime,